Hello, my name is Jacob Korsch. I'm recording the required video for CST-210 Contact Management System. Cool, so just jumping into the final product quickly, just to go over that, and then we'll go over the code and how it works. Final product is just going to be this contact management system. It's a complex application written in C++. So basically what we're doing is we have a text file, and we're reading data from there and converting it into contacts that the user can interact with. They can create new contacts, they can search through their contacts. Cool. So here you see the first option. The user can see all the current contacts in their data file. They can search between those. If they select the search option, they can search by ID. And then if they go out of bounds, they'll be given an error message and an error sound saying, hey, that doesn't exist. Try using a different ID. If we go back by using -1, we can go ahead and try the create contact command. And here we can just enter some information. So here I'll just give a name, Amelia Emerson. Oh, well, I guess Emerson will be her middle name. I don't know, Smith. Cool. And she lives on Emerson Street. And she lives in apartment 433, and she lives in, I don't know, let's say California. And her zip code is, what is the California zip code? It's been too long, so I'm just gonna enter some random stuff I don't remember. And then for the number, I'll put in a random California number there. And we'll just say she's a GCU online student, so Emerson at my.gcu.edu. And cool, we can see that she was successfully added to the contact list. She was in the data file. All of her information is put out. If the contact is missing something such as if they don't have an address to, that'll be omitted. And then, yeah, if we're making a new contact and we just enter a bunch of invalid information, it'll just say, hey, like, that's not a valid zip code. And then if I enter a valid zip code, and it's not a valid phone number. So I added some business rules that basically dictate what is a valid zip code, phone number, things such as that. And yeah, cool. So if I just feed this stuff, it'll accept. Cool. So, and then exit, and goodbye. Everything saves. Cool. So now we can jump into the actual code. So the first thing we have is our classes. So we have a menu manager class, a contact manager class, a file manager class, and we also have an address and a contact class. And these are all going to be represented obviously by our CPPs and our headers. So just jumping into the headers quickly to see the logic of how it works. We start in our main. We have a menu manager object. This is going to basically what controls all of the user interface. We're going to have our public function launch UI, which is going to be called by the main. And then we're just going to have launch search, which is going to be what's called if they choose to search. And then the temp input, which is just going to store the temporary user input when we use CIM. And then our contact manager object, which is going to, basically the contact manager object is just going to have a few public methods. We have start, create contact, display contacts, get size, get contact, and FM. These are all interacted with through the menu manager, so they are necessary to be public. And then our private access modifier, we have refresh contacts, which is just going to refresh and update all the contact vectors to match the contacts in the database. And then live contacts is just a representation of the current contacts from the database when we refresh it. And then the file manager object is necessary to interact with the file manager. And so the file manager has a few more functions. We have open and close. This is when we open and close the database. We have save input, and this is just to save the input whenever we end up writing something new. so that it actually stores in the database, which is in this case is just a text file. And then we have configure settings, which just configures the file settings. But the reason I have a method here is because the version of CLine I'm using right now is kind of messed up on Mac. So you need like to specify the absolute path. But if I were to back a version of CLine or use different IDE, I could just put in the actual text file database.txt. Anyway, then we have parse context from file. This just reads the file and then parses each line into an individual contact, and that uses the parse contact method. We have our fstream.db, which we just use to interact text file, and then we have parse address, which is the same thing as parse contact, except we're parsing the address data, which is the string data, and it parses it into an address object. And then we have our vector of contacts, which is going to hold the contacts from parse contacts from file, and temp input. Actually, this is unneeded. I ended up doing something different in the logic. And then db file location, which is just the absolute file location. Cool. So going into the actual like logic of it, I know this video is not supposed to be like insanely long, so I'm gonna try to go through this really quick. We have our open, which me and World Walker went through this for a while. I wrote everything in here except for we couldn't figure out why. For some reason, it was skipping a line of code, and we did two things. We changed this to the actual data type rather than it be fstream, and then we also just made a method for open and close rather than just individually calling open and close, because somewhere along the line when using ifstream and ofstream, they were colliding, I believe, somewhere in like the library, and that possibly caused some sort of issue that we were like in a call for an hour trying to figure it out, but we ended up just changing this and then making a method for these two. So cool. As for save input, all this does is it takes in a string and then a bool, which we just use for formatting, delimiter, and then cool. We have our configure settings, our parse context from file. This is just a db file location, absolute path. Contacts are clear, resetting it obviously every time we call this. We have our string, which is just the current line we're on. We use that line index to find or to set the ID of the contact, since I don't store an explicit unique ID. Obviously that's bad practice, but because we're doing it in a text file and not like an SQL server or anything or database, I assumed that was okay. Or I think I actually asked about it in the Discord, so I think that's fine. And then while get line, db cur line. So here we're just going through and we're calling the parse contact method, and then we're just putting through our arguments, which is the cur line, the line index, and then we add one to the index. I probably should have used a for loop here. Anyway, then we close everything out using the close method, which closes the file, and we return the contacts that we parsed. And then cool. This is just the individual parse. This is the string splitter algorithm. I was having trouble with this in class, and then you helped me, and then I was still having some issues with it. So I went on Stack Overflow and started kind of playing around with a few different ones, and I kind of combined two I found, and I came up with this. But these are like the users' posts that I kind of found this, not like exactly, but like kind of what I referenced this string splitter off of. And then validation is done upon creating contact. Double validation here would be redundant. So when we create the contact, we already validate everything, so I didn't double validate it, and then we just return that. And then parse address. This just parses the string data into a address object, which is going to be stored in the contact. And then contact manager. This is just going to go through and, you know, just basically interact with the contacts. So, you know, we have our live context, which is just a vector of all the contact objects, and then this is just all pretty formatting, but all it does is take in the user's input, store it in the file, in the database. Display contacts, self-explanatory, displays contact. We refresh the contacts first to make sure it's up to date. This is just more pretty formatting. And then, cool. This is going to parse contacts from file and then configure settings. And then the menu manager, this is all pretty formatting for the most part. I mean, launch UI, this just starts everything up, and then this is just pretty formatting. And then launch search, this just is the search area. It's in a while loop, but it's more just pretty formatting. I actually don't believe that this will work on Windows. I'm not sure. This changes the color on Mac terminals, but I don't think this will work on Windows or Linux, and I believe you're using Windows or Linux, so this probably might actually just print out this on the Windows terminal, so it may not change the color. They're not too sure. And the only other things to go over are the contact file and the address. So here we just have our contact, and our contact is going to have obviously our getters and setters, and beyond that it has an ID. I just made this a long because obviously it's beyond the scope of this, but like let's just pretend you had hundreds of thousands of, I don't know. First, last, address. Address is just the address object from the address class, and then a cell phone and a home phone. And then we have our constructor, and then you go to our address, and then, oh, I didn't change this to, I reformatted CLion to use Pragma ones because it was, there we go. There we go. Cool. So just getters and setters. Then we have a unique identifier, street, apartment, state, zip code, and then constructor, default constructor, getters and setters, and then the logic here, just the getters and setters, and the set zip. Yeah. Is there anything? No, there's nothing in here besides getters and setters really. So nothing really to explain there. And then, am I missing anything? No, I think that's everything. I guess just kind of explaining, like the purpose of this, obviously was for the contact management system, and then like encapsulation, all that. So, you have our main, and then we have our menu manager, which has is reliant on having a contact manager object, which is reliant on having a file manager object, which is reliant on having a contact object, which is reliant on having an address, so everything's kind of interconnected. And then the database is just a text file. I inputted bad data there because we were just for demonstration, but yeah, that's pretty much it. -1. Awesome, thank you.